8 years building $1 million company vanished in 15 seconds when my CEO, my best friend, looked me dead in the eyes and said, "We're replacing you with Jason." The room froze. Nobody breathed. Then I noticed Jason's smirk, the same smirk I remembered from the day I fired him 3 years earlier for embezzlement. That night, alone in my office, I discovered their $2.3 million secret, and exactly 2 years later, I became their boss. The boardroom fell silent the moment David finished speaking. 12 executives suddenly found their coffee cups fascinating, refusing to meet my gaze. My hands gripped my chair underneath the table, knuckles white, as the words hung in the air. "Mark, we're moving in a new creative direction." I felt the blood drain from my face, but kept my expression neutral. 8 years in advertising had taught me how to mask emotions. 8 years transforming TechVision from a basement startup with secondhand furniture into an industry titan with offices overlooking the bay. 8 years of international awards, record-breaking campaigns, and 2,800% company growth, all erased with a 15-second announcement. Jason Miller will be taking over as creative director, effective immediately. Jason extended his hand across the table, tanned, manicured, adorned with a watch worth more than my first car. As our palms met, his eyes flashed with something beyond professional courtesy. Recognition? Triumph? I couldn't place it yet. David, my boss, my best man, godfather to my daughter, couldn't meet my eyes for the first time in our friendship. "We'll need a 2-week transition period," he mumbled to his laptop screen. What no one in that room knew, what I myself wouldn't discover until 3 a.m. that night while packing my office belongings, was that this wasn't just another corporate reshuffling. The folder I accidentally found hidden in the server would reveal financial manipulation, so shocking it would eventually collapse the executive team, trigger a company-wide audit, and set me on a path to reclaiming everything I'd lost, and more. Tonight, I'll share how I uncovered their multi-million-dollar deception the moment I realized Jason was actually the same person I'd fired years earlier, and how I transformed devastating betrayal into the greatest opportunity of my career. Most importantly, I'll reveal the 3 critical documents that saved my professional life. Documents 98% of employees never think to keep until it's too late. September 2015. I remember the smell of fresh paint and cheap coffee when I first walked into TechVision's original office, if you could call a converted storage space with mismatched furniture an office. The elevator was perpetually broken, forcing everyone to climb 4 flights of stairs daily. Our conference room was the coffee shop downstairs. Our server was a desktop computer named Big Bertha that crashed whenever it rained. Then I met David Anderson. 6'2" with electric energy and vision so compelling it made you forget about the peeling paint and secondhand desks. He bounded across the room, hand extended. "Mark Wilson. Finally. I've followed your campaigns for years. That travel piece you did for Sunset Air? Brilliant. We can't pay you what you're worth yet, but you'll get equity and complete creative freedom. We're going to revolutionize how brands connect with humans." I believed him instantly. Something about David's conviction pulled you into his reality, a reality where our tiny agency would compete with global firms despite our non-existent track record. 3 days later, we pulled our first all-nighter preparing for the Meditech pitch, a medical technology startup with actual venture funding. I still remember Dawn from accounts falling asleep under her desk and David ordering pizza at 2 a.m., pacing as he refined our pitch for the 20th time. "If we land this, everything changes," he said, eyes bloodshot from exhaustion. The following Thursday, David burst through the door waving his phone like a winning lottery ticket. Meditech signed. 7:50. The entire office, all 8 of us, erupted in chaotic celebration. David grabbed me in a bear hug, so forceful it nearly cracked my ribs, both of us jumping like children. That night at Callahan's bar, David clinked his glass against mine, his face flushed with victory and cheap beer. This is just the beginning, Mark. You and me, we're going to build something legendary together. In that moment, I would have followed him anywhere. From 3 overworked designers, I built a creative team that would eventually become the envy of our industry. We didn't just create campaigns, we engineered cultural moments. Our Tesla rebrand won at Cannes. Our Spotify campaign broke the internet with 50 million views in 48 hours. The Wall Street Journal called us the creative agency redefining brand storytelling. Behind every success stood our partnership, David's business vision and my creative direction. We weren't just colleagues, we became family. I stood beside him at his wedding, delivering a toast that brought the room to tears. When my daughter was born, David canceled a meeting with investors to be at the hospital. When my father died suddenly, David helped arrange the funeral while I was too grief-stricken to function. We're not colleagues or friends, he told me once as we shared whiskey on his deck overlooking the ocean. We're brothers who happen to find each other through work. Our families vacationed together in Hawaii each summer. Our children called us uncle. At TechVision's 5th anniversary gala, David raised his glass before 200 employees and investors to Mark Wilson, the creative genius without whom none of this would exist. Half of this company belongs to your vision. The crowd roared. I felt invincible. Looking back, the warning signs seem obvious. A strategic meeting rescheduled while I was presenting at a conference. Client dinner photos on Instagram I hadn't been invited to. Small exclusions that seemed like innocent oversights until they formed a pattern. Then came the name, Jason Miller. It slipped into conversations so casually I barely noticed at first. Jason had an interesting perspective on our approach to the global tech pitch. Jason suggested we consider a different visual direction. I was talking to Jason about restructuring the creative workflow. Who was Jason? Just an old friend from college with great industry insights, David explained, a new guardedness in his eyes. He's consulting for us on strategic direction. I found it odd that this supposed creative genius had virtually no digital footprint, no portfolio, no notable career achievements, nothing beyond a sparse LinkedIn profile created just months earlier. Even stranger was how he seemed to attend meetings I was suddenly too busy to be invited to. The red flags multiplied. My team reported being asked to share creative presentations for Jason's review before I'd seen them. My executive dashboard access was mysteriously downgraded due to system updates. Client relationships I'd personally nurtured for years were being reassigned to streamline communication. The most telling moment came during our annual strategy retreat in Sonoma. David and I had always shared a cabin during these events, staying up late mapping the company's future over whiskey and ambition. This year, he roomed with Jason. Through the window, I watched them hunched over documents until 3 a.m., conversations falling silent whenever I approached. "You're being paranoid," my wife said when I confided my concerns. "David would never betray you after everything you've built together." I wanted desperately to believe her. So I doubled down, working longer hours, pushing my team to even greater creative heights, determined to prove my value was beyond question. The global tech campaign we launched that quarter broke every success metric in company history. The industry press called it revolutionary. Surely now David would remember why we'd been such a powerful partnership. Instead, the following Monday arrived with a calendar invitation that would change everything. I remember every detail of that morning with photographic clarity. The weight of my backpack over my shoulder. The perfect temperature of my coffee, hot enough to warm my hands through the paper cup. The optimistic May sunshine streaming through the lobby windows as I nodded to the security guard. I'd even brought fresh bagels for the creative team, a small celebration for our record-breaking quarter. Then my phone buzzed with the meeting invitation, strategic direction discussion, boardroom A, 10 a.m. No agenda attached. Required attendance for all executives. Nothing unusual on the surface. We held strategic meetings monthly. But an icy premonition settled in my stomach as I noticed the meeting organizer wasn't David, but Melissa from HR. I arrived 3 minutes early to find the boardroom already filled, unusual for our typically casual culture. An unfamiliar man in his mid-30s sat at David's right hand, athletic build, designer glasses, a casual confidence that seemed rehearsed. Without introduction, I knew this was Jason Miller. The silence when I entered felt orchestrated, conversations stopping mid-sentence. I took my usual seat, setting down my coffee with a hand I forced not to tremble. David cleared his throat, his eyes focused somewhere above my head. As you all know, TechVision is entering a crucial growth phase. Our investors are expecting us to scale rapidly, which requires fresh perspectives and new approaches. My mouth went desert dry. The room tilted slightly. Mark has built an incredible foundation for our creative department, David continued, his voice suddenly formal, as though reading from an invisible script. We're grateful for his contributions. But to reach our next milestone, we've decided to bring in specialized leadership more aligned with our future vision. He gestured to the stranger beside him. This is Jason Miller, who will be taking over as creative director effective immediately. Jason brings valuable experience and connections that will help position TechVision for our upcoming funding round and expansion. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. Blood rushed in my ears so loudly I almost missed Jason's first words. I'm excited to build on the foundation Mark created and elevate things to the next level. I've already identified several areas where we can implement immediate improvements. Improvements? To my department? The one that had just delivered record-breaking results? I felt 12 pairs of eyes analyzing my reaction. Years of client presentations had taught me to mask emotions under pressure. I smiled professionally and nodded. I appreciate the opportunity to have built the creative department. When do you want to begin the transition? Today, ideally, Jason replied with practiced empathy. HR has prepared a 2-week transition plan. We'd like you to help bring me up to speed on all active projects. 2 weeks. After 8 years, they were giving me 2 weeks. The remainder of the meeting passed in a blur. Budget forecasts, growth projections, strategic initiatives. I nodded at appropriate intervals while my mind screamed a single question. Why? Later, alone in my office, shock crystallized into analytical focus. Our numbers were stellar. Clients adored our work. My team had won more awards than any creative department in the company's history. Nothing about this made business sense. Sarah from finance knocked softly before slipping into my office. Her eyes were red-rimmed. This is wrong, Mark. Everyone's shocked. No one understands why they'd replace you with someone no one's ever heard of. I thanked her for her support, maintaining my professional facade until she left. Only then did I allow myself a moment of raw emotion, hands shaking uncontrollably as I stared at the awards lining my soon-to-be former office. David avoided me for the rest of the day, suddenly busy with investor calls. When we finally spoke at day's end, his explanation felt rehearsed. This isn't personal, Mark. The company's evolving. Jason has specialized expertise in areas critical to our growth. What expertise? I asked directly. What has he created that I could see? David shifted uncomfortably. His work is mostly confidential. But trust me, he's exactly what we need right now. Trust me, after 8 years building a company together, that's all I got. The betrayal cut deeper than just losing my job. David had been family to me. We'd held each other's children minutes after their births. We'd celebrated every milestone together, personal and professional. Now he couldn't even look me in the eye while ending my career. The 2 weeks that followed were excruciating. I was expected to train Jason, transfer my client relationships, and introduce him to my team, all while pretending this was a normal professional transition. Jason's questions revealed his shocking lack of experience. He didn't understand basic creative processes. He confused clients' previous campaigns. Yet David treated him like a creative messiah. Most disturbing was how Jason began changing systems I'd carefully built, consolidating reporting structures, changing project codes, reassigning key client relationships. None of these changes improved creative output, but they all obscured financial tracking. That detail should have been my first clue. The revelation came at 2:37 a.m. on what should have been my third to last day. I'd stayed after hours, backing up personal files and project samples for my portfolio. The office was empty. Even the janitorial staff had finished their round. Searching for a specific campaign file, I noticed an unfamiliar folder structure in the financial server that my credentials shouldn't have accessed. A glitch in the system during my permission downgrades had accidentally left one pathway open. Inside was a folder labeled Investor Deck, Restricted. Professional curiosity, or perhaps fate, made me click. 2 PowerPoint files sat side by side with nearly identical names. ValleyTech_financials_board.pptx. ValleyTech_financials_actual.pptx. I opened them simultaneously on dual monitors, flipping between slides. Same presentation template, same graphs, dramatically different numbers. The version-marked board showed revenue projections 32% higher than actual. Expense allocations differed by millions. Most disturbing, the board version claimed the ValleyTech project had generated $1.7 million in profit. The actual version showed it barely breaking even. My coffee cup slipped from my hand, splashing across my desk. I'd been in every ValleyTech planning meeting. I'd personally approved the creative budgets. These numbers weren't just slightly massaged, they were fictional. Heart-pounding, I searched for other client folders. The pattern repeated across 5 major accounts. Project X showed $800,000 profit to the board, but ran $230,000 over budget in reality. The Spotify campaign that went viral? The board saw $1.2 million profit. Actual numbers showed we'd spent $340,000 more than allocated to achieve those results. In total, $2.3 million had been essentially fabricated across various accounts. The company wasn't massively profitable as represented to investors. It was barely breaking even, with creative accounting masking the reality. I downloaded everything to a secure drive, my mind racing. But why replace me? I wasn't in finance. I didn't handle the books. Then it hit me with physical force, making me gasp audibly in the empty office. I was the one person who knew these project budgets intimately. The one executive who would immediately spot these discrepancies if included in financial discussions. The one obstacle to their deception. As dawn broke, exhausted from a sleepless night of investigation, I made one last search, Jason Miller TechVision. The search returned a single archived HR file from 3 years earlier. My hands trembled so violently I misclicked twice before opening it. Employee termination notice. Jason Miller. Position, Finance Coordinator. Reason for termination, financial misconduct, unauthorized budget allocations. The room spun around me. I grabbed the desk to steady myself, suddenly struggling to breathe. Jason wasn't just some random friend of David's. He was the finance coordinator I'd caught redirecting creative budget funds 3 years ago. The same person I'd reported to HR and David for embezzlement. The man I'd personally fired was now my replacement. Everything clicked into horrifying clarity. David hadn't just betrayed me professionally. He conspired with someone I'd fired for ethical violations to manipulate company finances, then eliminated the one person who could identify the fraud. Further searching revealed emails between them dating back 14 months. Messages discussing how to phase out Mark's oversight and restructure reporting to streamline processes. My replacement had been planned for over a year while David smiled to my face, attended my daughter's birthday parties, and called me brother. I found a document outlining their strategy. First, exclude me from key meetings. Then, question my creative decisions to undermine confidence. Next, introduce Jason as a consultant. Finally, present the change as a necessary evolution to investors. A systematic dismantling of my position executed with military precision. The most damning evidence: presentation decks with two versions, one showing actual numbers, another with inflated figures for the board. The difference aligned perfectly with the $2.3 million discrepancy I'd uncovered. I needed an ally. Sarah from finance had always been meticulously ethical. I texted her to meet at a coffee shop 2 blocks from the office before work. They've been manipulating the numbers for at least 9 months, she confirmed, voice barely above a whisper. I tried to raise concerns twice. David said it was standard practice for our growth stage and temporary adjustments for the investor pitch. My mind raced with options. Go public? That would destroy the company and hurt innocent employees. Confront David? He'd already shown he'd sacrifice our friendship for money. Report to authorities? Possibly, but that could take months to resolve. Then I remembered Michael Zhang, TechVision's lead investor, a straight-shooting venture capitalist who'd always respected my creative guidance. He deserved to know his investment was built on deception. I met Michael Zhang at his private club the following evening, bringing a carefully organized presentation of evidence. His expression remained impassive as I walked him through the financial discrepancies, the falsified investor decks, and finally, Jason's termination record. You understand what you're showing me? He asked when I finished. This could collapse the company. I helped build TechVision from nothing, I replied. I don't want to destroy it, but investors and employees deserve the truth. Michael studied me. Most people in your position would seek revenge. I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in integrity. He nodded slowly. Give me 48 hours. I returned to TechVision the next morning for my second to last day with an Oscar-worthy performance. I smiled, conducted transition meetings, and shared client insights with Jason as though I hadn't discovered their scheme. David seemed relieved by my professional demeanor, even attempting friendly conversation in the break room. You're taking this transition remarkably well, he commented. Life's too short for bitterness, I replied, meeting his eyes directly. We all make choices we have to live with. Something in my tone made him pause, a flicker of unease crossing his face before he mumbled an excuse about another investor call. My final day passed without ceremony. I turned in my laptop, badge, and company credit card to HR. David was unfortunately traveling and unable to say goodbye. I kept copies of all termination documents, a detail that would prove crucial later. Exactly 1 week after my departure, the TechVision earthquake struck. Michael Zhang had requested an emergency board meeting and presented my findings. The board authorized an immediate independent audit, froze all executive financial authorizations, and placed David and Jason on administrative leave pending investigation. 3 weeks later, the audit confirmed everything I'd discovered, and worse. The financial manipulation extended beyond my findings, with evidence of misappropriated investor funds and falsified growth metrics. David and Jason were removed permanently. Criminal charges were considered, but ultimately not pursued in exchange for full financial restitution. I received an unexpected call from Nancy Rodriguez, TechVision's board chair. Mark, the board owes you an apology. Your findings saved this company from potential securities fraud. We'd like to discuss your return, perhaps as Chief Operating Officer with enhanced equity. The offer was tempting, but returning to TechVision meant rebuilding in someone else's house, one with painful memories etched into every corner. I appreciate the offer, Nancy, but I've started something new. During my brief unemployment, something remarkable had happened. 5 of my former team members had resigned in protest after my departure. Clients had begun calling, dissatisfied with the creative direction under Jason. Several industry colleagues reached out with project opportunities. I secured a small business loan, leased a modest office space, and founded Creative Pulse with my core team of loyalists. Our mission statement prominently featured the word integrity not as marketing, but as foundational principle. The early months tested every ounce of my resilience. Starting over at 34 wasn't in my life plan. There were sleepless nights worrying about making payroll, questioning whether clients would trust a new agency, wondering if I'd made a catastrophic mistake. Our breakthrough came unexpectedly. Valley Tech, the client whose manipulated financials I'd first discovered, terminated their TechVision contract and reached out directly. "We've seen the difference in quality since your departure," their CMO explained. "And we've heard rumors about financial irregularities. We want to work with people we can trust." That single contract allowed us to expand from 5 to 15 employees almost overnight. We moved from our tiny sublet to a proper office. Former TechVision employees and clients began migrating to us, drawn by our reputation for exceptional work delivered with uncompromising ethics. 18 months after my unceremonious boardroom dismissal, Creative Pulse wasn't just surviving, we were thriving. Our client roster read like a who's who of premium brands. Our work was winning awards. Most importantly, we'd built a culture where ethical business was non-negotiable. Meanwhile, TechVision struggled. Despite the board's best efforts, the company's reputation had suffered. Talent exodus continued. Clients questioned reliability. Their stock value tumbled as the financial restatements became public. Then came the phone call that wrote the final chapter. Michael Zhang, who had remained on TechVision's board while also becoming Creative Pulse's first investor, reached out with an extraordinary proposition. TechVision's board is considering selling portions of the company to stabilize finances. Would Creative Pulse be interested in acquiring their creative division? 23 months after being escorted from the building, I signed acquisition papers for a 30% stake in TechVision, including complete control of their creative division, my former department. Walking into that boardroom again, this time as an owner rather than an outcast, was the most surreal moment of my professional life. Many faces were new, but some were familiar, watching with wide eyes as I took a seat at the head of the table where David once sat. For those who don't know me, I'm Mark Wilson. I helped build this company once before, and I'm here to help rebuild it again, this time on a foundation of transparency, creativity, and absolute integrity. Today, Creative Pulse employs over 50 people. We've expanded into 3 major markets, with annual revenue exceeding $15 million. The greatest satisfaction comes from the culture we've created, one where brilliant creativity and ethical business practices aren't separate considerations, but the same standard. The most valuable lesson from this journey wasn't about revenge or even vindication. It was about how crisis reveals character, both in ourselves and in others. When faced with betrayal, we can choose bitterness or growth. When offered shortcuts, we can choose easy profit or lasting value. The 3 documents that saved my career? First, detailed creative budgets I'd personally approved and archived. Second, the original employment termination record for Jason. Third, emails documenting exactly when I was excluded from meetings where financial matters were discussed. Always maintain meticulous records. They might become your lifeline someday. The boardroom was packed last month when Nancy Rodriguez introduced me as the keynote speaker at TechVision's annual company retreat, the same Nancy who had called offering me my job back 2 years earlier. As I stepped to the podium, facing a room that included both familiar faces and new ones, I felt no desire for vindication, only profound gratitude for the painful gift of necessary reinvention. The greatest danger in your career isn't failure, I told them. It's succeeding at building someone else's dream so completely that you forget to build your own. Had David not betrayed me, I might have continued building his vision forever, content with the golden handcuffs of success within someone else's framework. The betrayal forced me to create something authentically mine, something more aligned with my values than I ever could have built within TechVision's structure. If you're facing workplace betrayal right now, remember 3 things that might just save your career. First, document everything. save emails, record meeting notes, archive your achievements. The worst betrayals happen to those without evidence. The thumb drive I kept with detailed budgets became my proof when accusations started flying. Second, maintain your integrity even when others abandon theirs. How you respond to injustice reveals more about your character than the injustice itself. The clients and team members who followed me to Creative Pulse did so not because I was the better creative director, but because I was the person they could trust. Third, recognize that sometimes losing a position creates space for building something better. The darkest moment in my career, packing my office at 2 a.m. with tears streaming down my face, became the catalyst for building a company I now own rather than just work for. The warning signs I missed might save your career: sudden exclusion from meetings you previously attended, unexplained changes to reporting structures, new consultants without verifiable credentials. Trust your instincts. That unease you feel isn't paranoia. It's your experience recognizing patterns before your conscious mind can articulate them. Have you experienced workplace betrayal? Share your story in the comments. The community that's formed around these videos has become an incredible support network, people who faced similar challenges and emerged stronger. I personally read every comment and respond to as many as I can. Remember this: they may take your position, but they can't take your talent. They may steal your office, but they can't steal your vision. The company that once discarded me now answers to me, not because I sought revenge, but because I refused to let someone else's betrayal define my worth. Thank you for watching. I'm Mark Wilson, and I'll see you in the next video.